Okay, so I think I figured out the plot for Endgame. Many fans of the MCU, particularly those that are upset with Captain Marvel right now, are going to want to hear this. So if you're into that sort of thing, stay with me because here we go. This is an exciting time. Spring has arrived, the NHL playoffs are only 5 games away. Go Leafs, go! It's also my birthday, and the channel is reaching its 3rd-year anniversary. Since I've been demonetized several times, and after only 9 months of YouTube investigating my channel, I'm finally monetized once more. Yay. So this video marks the triumphant return of Politically Impaired, so here we go. Now I have a theory that I had quite some time ago, and with the release of the newer trailers for the film, my hunch has been proven more and more accurate. The hunch that the final fight between Avengers and Thanos has already happened, and we missed it completely. Now I usually stick to political issues, more controversial issues, but being such a huge fan of the MCU, I just couldn't help myself. So people that usually tune in for a political discussion, just, bear with me if you can. And just a quick heads up, there are many huge spoilers coming up, so if you don't like that sort of thing, click off now. I'm slowly starting to see the pattern and how the directors of these movies operate. Some of the biggest reveals actually come from the less popular films. The top 4 reveals can be found in Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Captain Marvel. Although I am a fan of Age of Ultron, it was not considered one of the best Avenger films, unfortunately. The Age of Ultron had many clues hidden away that are only now coming into fruition, and if we pay close enough attention, everything starts to make sense. Now the MCU truly kicked into gear with the discovery of the Tesseract, which is why it showed up in the end credits of Captain Marvel, leaving everyone guessing as to its significance. Though Iron Man, the Hulk, and even Thor were definitely setting us up for the Avengers, each of those movies were standalone in all reality. Iron Man 1 was Stark finding his footing and dealing with Obadiah Stane. The Hulk, same thing, just finding his way in the world. Even Thor was just our hero essentially reaching manhood. Captain America showed us the first real threat to the entirety of the MCU with the introduction of the Tesseract. A threat big enough to stretch 20-something movies long. The Tesseract marked the very beginning of the overall storyline, and with it the Avengers in general. That's why it was crucial to have the Red Skull make an appearance in Infinity War. Think about it for a moment. The actor that originally played the Red Skull actually never made it to the studio for the cameo. The return of the Red Skull in this particular scene was so crucial and important that they were willing to find another actor to play the character. The reason is overall wrap-up of the Avengers series as a whole, at least the first 3 phases anyway. Being a story writer myself, I was able to sort of see all this coming. It's just good story writing, so I do have to take my hat off to the directors. They definitely know what they're doing. Keep in mind the title of the first Captain America film. This was the first movie to have the name Avenger in its title, and the official kickoff of the Avengers franchise. Now the Avengers story may have began with the first appearance of Nick Fury in the first Iron Man film, but the Avengers films didn't really have a leg to stand on until we had a genuine threat from a Marvel enemy. Thor gave us that first enemy, introducing Loki, but the Tesseract was still nowhere to be seen, even on Asgard. No, instead we see the Tesseract for the first time in the hands of the Red Skull, which I believe is the key to figuring out just how the events of Endgame will play out. Wrapping up this massive phase of Avengers films will require the storyline to end where it began. Again, it's just good storytelling. This is where the end scene from Captain Marvel comes in. Despite how everyone has reacted to Captain Marvel and the controversy surrounding Bri Larson, we cannot ignore the less than subtle appearance of the Tesseract in this scene. Marvel likes to throw these post-credit scenes at us, and has trained us well. Sometimes it's a huge clue in what to expect in the future, and other times it's just a funny little extra scene that means very little, sort of like the shawarma scene at the end of the first Avengers film. But in order to wrap up this section of the Avengers franchise, we end where we begin. Which means the endgame must involve a reminder of the beginning, the Red Skull, and the key to its end, the Space Stone or the Tesseract, and likely the end of Captain America. Kinda sucks, he's always been my favorite personally. The Tesseract is in fact the key to Endgame and the entirety of the franchise thus far. Those that didn't like Captain Marvel might want to hear this part. If you were like me, you probably freaked out with the prospect of Captain Marvel being the one to take out Thanos. But have no fear, that is not what is going on here, and the newbie will not make the final blow, and the evidence is abundantly clear on that. Now, what we notice about the trailer is that the memories are all in black and white, emphasizing the red, and by red, I mean Scarlet. The Scarlet Witch, though long since snapped, showed us what to expect in Age of Ultron. This may not be the only reason for the red, but I'll get to that too. At first glance, when she screws with the Avengers' minds, we assume that it's exactly that, screwing with their minds and nothing more. But we completely missed this scene.
Magic How could you?
How could I what?
You said we would destroy the Avengers. Make a better world.
It will be better.
When everyone is dead.
That is not...
Scarlet Witch saw what Ultron was planning to do. She looked into his future, then turned on him and changed the outcome of events. This is exactly what she did with the Avengers as well. And events that we thought were in the past were actually premonitions of the future and are still able to change. First, we see Thor, where he is warned about Ragnarok, and how he will bring about the deaths of his people. We also learn that his power doesn't come from his hammer, but from within him, which all came together in Ragnarok. So the premonition was actually correct. Next, we have Black Widow, who is shown having a conversation with her old headmistress, watching herself train to be an assassin as a teenager, and important to note her hair, shorter and red. But notice how she's not experiencing this in the first person as her younger self, but as an outside perspective, as though these events have yet to happen. We'll have to wait to see the Black Widow movie to be sure, but it's clear that this vision was of the future, a time-traveling version of herself that will eventually come true. Will Black Widow go back in time to stop herself from being spayed? What if she does get caught in a time vortex like Mrs. Pym warned? Next, we have Steve Rogers, who can be seen in a ballroom to finally have the dance with the love of his life, Peggy Carter. But we know this didn't happen, as Cap would have been frozen at the bottom of the ocean at the time. This tells us that Cap will time travel back to this time in his own future. But this scene is erratically switching from a swinging club to an empty room, as if this is something that may or may not happen depending on his own personal choices. This may give us a clue into the future, as the scene reveals one of two choices he will have to make, one leading to life and the other leading to death. It sort of looks like a time vortex that may or may not happen depending on what he chooses. Does it not? Last, we have the most revealing of all, Tony's vision of the death of the Avengers. This part is most crucial as it reveals the deaths of our most beloved characters, with the exception of Stark himself and Hawkeye. Here we see Hawkeye mourning next to a fallen girl, but notably not Black Widow. Who would he possibly choose over his best friend? His daughter, of course. Then we see the Endgame trailer, and lo and behold, we learn that Hawkeye is training his daughter to fight, confirming that Tony Stark's nightmare was reality, that Hawkeye's daughter did indeed survive the snap, and that Scarlet Witch was showing us something that was about to happen. A fight on the other side of the wormhole during the Battle of New York. Important to note is the lack of any sign of this during the events of Avengers 1. So the question we have to ask ourselves, and I think it's worth asking, is Thanos' floating rock in which he dwells capable of stealth mode? If so, Nebula might have been on the rock with him during the Battle of New York, as we see her next here in the Guardians of the Galaxy, right after the Battle of New York. Note the blue glowing orbs embedded in the rock during Stark's vision. Putting aside the obvious formation of the shapes of the rocks, as we look to Avengers 1 where Loki is meeting with the head of the Chitauri, on Thanos' rock. We can see the exact same formations and glowing orbs, telling us that without a doubt, Thanos was there on the other side of the wormhole during the Battle of New York. Now that Nebula is part of the team, it may be her that reveals that Thanos was waiting outside the wormhole the whole time, completely unseen. Obvious when you consider both the space and Mind Stones being involved in the original fight. You can bet that Thanos would be watching from a distance. I doubt he considers the Avengers a real threat at this point, so once the battle is lost due to Loki's failure, I would imagine that Thanos thought Earth was just as good a place as any to keep the stones until he's ready for them in Infinity War. At this point, to the Avengers, the plan will consist of getting to Thanos and killing him before he assembles the gauntlet. Now, current set photos have already revealed that they will indeed travel back to the Battle of New York, but we also have this scene in Age of Ultron foretelling the events.
The Avengers were supposed to be different than S.H.I.E.L.D. Anybody remember when I carried a nuke through a wormhole?
No, it's never come up.
Save
No,
New York?
Never heard that.
Recall that? A hostile alien army came charging through a hole in space. We're standing 300 feet below it. We're the Avengers. We can bust arms dealers all the live long day, but that up there, that's the Endgame.
That up there, that's the Endgame. That up there, that up there, that...
How are you guys planning on beating that?
Together. We'll lose. And we'll do that together, too.
So now we know that the big bad fight will indeed take place on the other side of the wormhole. This is all about Iron Man 3, as Tony Stark's biggest fear and cause for anxiety is having to go back into the wormhole.
How did he get out of the wormhole?
Wait a minute, Tony. Tony.
So this represents an internal struggle where Stark has to face his fears. So expect Tony Stark to have a panic attack or two on the way up. Most importantly, Tony is aware that they are going to lose. This scene is absolutely crucial, as it shows that if time plays out as is, the Avengers will lose the battle, and Stark's premonition will come true. So something different has to be done in order to alter the future. What more will Tony Stark do? Well, here's the big reveal, folks. Many YouTubers have predicted that the team will go back in time and secure all of the Infinity Stones before Thanos assembles the gauntlet. But this idea is counterproductive in a movie script storyline. We know that to undo the snap, we don't have to eliminate all the Infinity Stones, just one, the Space Stone. So the Tesseract must be destroyed, and according to Google and multiple sources, the stone can only be destroyed by itself, and Tony Stark will have to convince her to do it. It's important to note that if the source of her power, which is the Space Stone itself, is destroyed by her hand, then there's a good chance she will lose her power, which is why she will not be making the final blow, as she will be mortal once more by the time Thanos is ready to be taken down. The Mind Stone is another option, but in order for Vision to exist, the events of Ultron must play out.
Thanos threatens half the universe. One life cannot stand in the way of defeating him.
But it should. We don't trade lives, Vision.
The Tesseract will be the target, as Captain Marvel will simply lose her powers and still live, as opposed to preventing Vision from living in the first place, which would obviously occur if we destroy the Mind Stone, right? Now, we've learned recently that there has been some reshoots and possible alternative endings since the release of Captain Marvel. Has Bri Larson pissed that many people off that they decided to kill off her character, as opposed to just taking her power from her? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Either way, it's looking like she's going to have to sacrifice herself for the greater good in order for the Avengers to make their move on a less powerful Thanos. Now let's get to the time travel parts, because this part is going to be awesome.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
So why choose the Battle of New York for the big bad fight? If my theory is correct, Nebula will tip them off to a time when Thanos will be accessible to them, as well as the Tesseract during the same event. Now, if Nebula was indeed on Thanos' rock during the Battle of New York, then there's no way she's going to be able to return there in a different timeline and fight herself.
And I won't risk accidentally running into my other self.
The other self?
Yes, there are now two of me here, and there are two of you here.
So what will current Nebula be doing during the big bad fight? She'll be guarding the Tesseract with Captain Marvel, which is why you don't see Captain Marvel in Tony Stark's vision. Current day Nebula won't actually be making the fight, but past Nebula will be there fighting on the opposing side. Old Nebula will be completely unkillable because she won't be around in the future to tip them off. Her old self can't know of the plan, because if they lose, Thanos would surely destroy her if he knew that she played a part in his demise. So both Nebula and Captain Marvel must not enter the wormhole for any reason. If my theory is correct, current-day Nebula will have memories of Thanos' victory in the past, which is what will inspire her to say this in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
This is one fight you won't win. Let's head to the kiln.
If the Tesseract were to be destroyed before the events of the Avengers themselves would never be able to actually assemble in the first place. So in order to actually get into the wormhole, they're going to have to sneak into the battle unseen as to not disrupt the events that lead them to where they are. They need to get into the wormhole without being seen and locate the Tesseract again without being seen. In other words, not only do they have to have a ship capable of stealth mode, but they will have to become invisible themselves, hence new invisibility suits for all the Avengers. Star-Lord's ship is capable of going into stealth mode and outer space flight, which is why we see Tony Stark stranded on this ship in the trailer rather than Titan where we last saw him. Star-Lord's ship is absolutely crucial for the plan. These suits were not created to go to different dimensions and whatnot. They were designed to be stealth. The invisibility suits were indeed predicted in Iron Man 3, if you recall.
I would have added in the retro
Retro-reflective panels?
to make him stealth mode.
You want a stealth mode?
Cool, right?
That's actually a good idea. Maybe I'll build.
But Star-Lord's ship will provide the tech that Tony has been searching for to finally make it happen. This is why there will be a great deal of time between Tony Stark making his way back to Earth and suiting up for the final mission, as that type of tech takes time to develop. Hence Black Widow's longer hair showing us the extended timeline. Now, the existence of the suits are more than just invisibility, but clues. Why would the entire team need them, including the non-scientific ones like War Machine? Because when they enter Hank Pym's shrinking capsule, ready to travel back in time, they are preparing for a fight. So it's all hands on deck. The cool part about this is the shrinking factor. The capsule itself is a two-seater, incapable of holding an entire Avengers team, and they're going to need a ship to fly up into the wormhole. This means that 2 Avengers will be up front, and on the floor will be a tiny Star-Lord ship, with the other Avengers inside. They'll travel through the back of the van and into a time vortex, then out the other side where they will arrive in the past, get out of the capsule, and then find a wide open space and unshrink the ship to let out the rest of the Avengers, and get themselves to the Battle of New York. On Star-Lord's ship will be all the gear, the suits, so when it's time to travel into the wormhole, they are battle ready and out of their invisibility suits. Now here comes the coolest part. Infinity War's fight scene between Stark and Thanos is absolutely crucial. Remember that Thanos knew who he was.
Stark. You know me? I do.
Could it be that Thanos actually remembered him from this attack, and he simply didn't say anything? Was this the clue Doctor Strange needed to confirm that the winning scenario was already in motion? It was, after all, this moment that he agreed to exchange the Time Stone for Tony's life, regardless of how much he swore he wouldn't. Strange knew that they would face off at some point in the past, and that the winning scenario was already in motion, and Thanos knowing who he was the ultimate clue. If we have a look at all the characters involved in that fight scene on Titan, out of all these characters, he would only recognize one from the fight that already took place outside the wormhole back in New York: Tony Stark. So it's important to note that Stark's vision of the future lacked every character that fought on Titan with the exception of Tony Stark. This might also explain why Star-Lord's ship was nowhere to be seen during the fight on Titan, as Thanos would have recognized it instantly from the final fight he has already won in the past. This, of course, was all well orchestrated, which is why Tony Stark was the only original Avengers to make the trip to Titan in the first place, and why everybody but Tony Stark and Nebula were snapped out of existence. Because as we can see in his premonition, not one of them were present at the Endgame fight on Thanos' rock. Also important to note is that Nebula didn't show up until they were already in mid-fight, which means there has yet to be a conversation between Stark and Nebula. Now that they both have all the time in the world, enough for Nebula to bring up an important question anyway. You know, like, did you not learn from your first battle with Thanos? Were your friends dying not enough reason to better prepare? At this point, Stark will draw a blank, not recalling any of this, and concluding that this battle has yet to happen, that his Avenger friends are still very much alive, but his premonition lines up with her assurance that it has already happened. Maybe that's why Thanos was so sure that he could take the Hulk in Infinity War, because he'd already done it in the past with ease. But something of note, Scarlet Witch messed with Banner's mind too in Age of Ultron, but we were never actually shown what she revealed to him.
I want the big one.
That little witch is messing with your mind. You're stronger than her. You're smarter than her. You're Bruce Banner. Right. Don't mention puny Banner.
I have a feeling that she showed him his death at the hands of Thanos, on the floating rock the same way that Tony Stark was shown. The fight on the ship in Infinity War's opening scene was mostly instinct. But after he was knocked out, that's when the Hulk realized that Thanos was in fact real, and how he was going to die by his hand. Could that be the reason for the Hulk's bad case of ED in Infinity War? Perhaps Hulk knows that in order to defeat Thanos, he's going to need Banner's intellect. This might be another factor that can alter the timeline, as Tony's vision shows the Hulk as we all know him and love him. But if Banner is able to make peace with his alter ego and become Professor Hulk, the Hulk will become much more strategic in his fighting capabilities rather than the Hulk smash version that we all know and love. So as the timeline sits, Hulk is not supposed to become Professor Hulk, as the Vision was insistent on showing us that he is grunting like an animal, and merging with Banner will alter the future. The Ancient One might be a key factor in calming the Beast, knowing that she is already on the cast list for Endgame. Now, in order to put this plan together, there are certain characters that are absolutely needed, as we are dealing with the Tesseract after all. Tony, Banner, and even Captain Marvel know about it and have studied it for the most part, but they aren't going to put the plan together without knowing for sure that it's going to work. So you can bet that we're going to be seeing Eric Selva again, as he had intricate knowledge of the Tesseract and will know how to destroy it. We may even see the return of Jane Foster. Who knows? I think we will. But this may open up a whole new avenue that may have been forgotten about. The red ether from Thor the Dark World was described by Odin himself as a sixth Infinity Stone in liquid form.
The leader Malekith made a weapon out of that darkness, and it was called the ether. While the other relics often appear as stones, the ether is fluid and ever-changing. It changes matter into dark matter. It seeks out host bodies, drawing strength from their life force.
Which may be the reason so much red was emphasized in the trailer as well. If Infinity Stones can be destroyed by themselves, is it possible that one of our characters will be possessed by the red ether, proving a worthy adversary for the Infinity Gauntlet, the one stone that Thanos seemed to overlook? Could it be possible that it's what Jane Foster has been doing this entire time? As being possessed by the ether could possibly have gave her foresight into the snap and Endgame in general. But one thing to which we are positive is that Thanos would have had the Time Stone from the beginning of this story, which means he could be intercepting their plans at any time. Now if our Avengers make a stop at the temple while they're in New York and secure the Time Stone from the past, they could in fact be able to match fire with fire. And an all-out time battle will commence, as long as they put it back when they're done, as to not disrupt the timeline. Otherwise, they'll all disappear into nothingness and wake up in an alternative reality like Wolverine. But if future Thanos does arrive to stop their plan, and we see two time stones operating in the same location against one another, perhaps this is what will cause Captain America and Black Widow to be transported back in time and into their own time vortex. Having Thanos with the assembled stones make an appearance to head them off would be where the red ether would come into play. Someone possessed by the ether wouldn't be affected by the time stone, at least I don't think. Captain Marvel will play a significant part in taking him down, that much is for certain. But she will not make the kill shot as she's too new, and would not bring satisfaction to the fans, guaranteed. No, the kill shot has to come from a small handful of possibilities in order to satisfy the fans and wrap up the movies properly. Any good storyteller would tell you that. Only one of the original Avengers will suffice to please the audience. Thor already made his move before the snap, so I would count him out regardless of Stormbreaker, though I would expect him to do some serious damage, no question there. Iron Man is out because again we've already seen them fight, and a good story arc would have Thanos meet his end by someone that he didn't see coming. Basic storytelling at its finest. That's why the directors made sure that we already saw a fight between Thor, Iron Man, and the Hulk, and to a lesser extent Captain America in Infinity War, getting them all out of the way and never fighting Thanos together as one. No, I would wager, and hear me out on this, that the person to make the final blow, the one with the kill shot, will be Hawkeye. They spent so many moments of his MCU life emphasizing just how human and useless he is to the team.
Look, I just need to know, because the city is flying. Okay, look, the city is flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
Hi, coming to you.
Keep up, old man. Nobody would know. Nobody.
So it would be ultimate irony to have him make the final blow. A mere human taking down a Titan, the heart of the Avengers, which is a key reason he was completely absent during Infinity Wars. That being said, it would not surprise me to see Hawkeye get possessed by the ether in order to do this. Remember that Stark's premonition only showed Hawkeye with his head lowered. His eyes were hidden, which would be the giveaway, as red ether makes your eyes black, as Jane Foster showed us in the Dark World. Though it's something he's probably used to by now. So all that being said, let's play out the events of Endgame so we know what's going to happen before it actually happens. If future Thanos will indeed alter the timeline and chase our heroes into the past, then our story will most likely begin on Titan 2, where he is retired and his armor is hanging up. He will then get a premonition, an alternative memory that wasn't previously there, and use the time stone to disappear into an unknown time, the Endgame battle. Knowing Thor, this will probably happen during or before an attempt at revenge post-snap, and Thor misses his window, falsely assuming that Thanos is simply a coward running from Thor's fury. Next, the remaining Avengers are dealing with the post-snap world. They are desperately in search for anyone remaining that may be able to help, Hawkeye the first to be located along with his crime-fighting daughter, partner, in Asia, and Black Widow takes the SHIELD ship to retrieve him. Avengers are assembled for the most part. Thor returns revealing that Thanos ran like a bitch, and that there is simply no way of locating him, and the real depression kicks in. This is when Fury's pager will stop working, signaling the arrival of Captain Marvel. But this is also where we will see the arrival of Ant-Man as well, bringing with him Hank Pym's laboratory and portal. Here, Banner will get a glimpse into the possibility of traveling through time, but he will be no expert on the matter. A plan forms with the possibility of traveling back in time, but instead sending Captain Marvel and Thor back in time to defeat Thanos old-fashioned style. Just a good old-fashioned ass-kicking.
You bet your ass.
Steve, he said a bad language word.
Did you tell everyone about that?
They will conclude that controlling the time vortex will be too risky, and an expert on time will be needed to ensure that it can be done safely. This is where Thor and Rocket will locate Eric Sellner and possibly Jane Foster, most likely in Scotland, as he seems to have a knack for returning to Stonehenge, which explains the lobster traps in the trailer.
The police were called to the scene shortly after 11 a.m. this morning after a seemingly harmless rambler approached the area, then decided to strip naked and...
Next we have a visit from Valkyrie, as she has the ability to sense death through the galaxy, a gift given to her by Odin. She will most likely be the one to sense Tony Stark's death on the floating ship and alert Thor of his location and save his life. They will bring Stark and Nebula back via Stormbreaker and the Bifrost, temporarily leaving the ship behind. With Eric Sellner as the scientific lead, he will explain how to perfect the control of Time Vortex. But most importantly, he will explain that if they are to defeat Thanos, they will have to know where he will be in the past, along with the Tesseract. Nebula will reveal that Thanos was on the other side of the wormhole during the Battle of New York. Eric will explain that the timeline cannot be altered in any way, shape, or form if the events of the future are to take place, so they must do so incognito.
Something inconspicuous!
Doc, come in, Doc. This is Marty, over.
This is where Tony's nanotech will come into play. With help from Rocket and possibly Black Panther's sister, he will build the suits for each Avenger, whilst Rocket fixes and retrieves the ship. Tony will recall the conversation during Infinity War, possibly seeing the full premonition with help from the Ancient One. He will realize that the battle has already occurred, and must be done differently if the events are to be changed. Because as it sits, Avengers lose. Jane will bring up the Aether, and locating this powerful substance will become priority one. Sellner will also suggest destroying the Tesseract, and this is where Tony Stark and Captain Marvel will clash, as she will be reluctant to give up her power. I'm guessing Captain America will give her a lecture about self-sacrifice for the greater good, and eventually get her on board the plan. The destruction of the Space Stone will be a possible failsafe if Thanos is indeed the victor. All of these things will take time, years even, which is why we see Black Widow's hair much longer in the next scene. At some point, Iron Man will realize that Mjolnir was present in his vision, and Avengers 1 Thor may be able to see Star-Lord's ship and travel with them to Thanos' rock. So knowing that Eric Selva has the Tesseract in New York on top of Stark Tower, which is what is keeping the portal open, they then shift the mission into distracting Thor, old Thor, long enough for the ship to enter the wormhole without him knowing, and without altering the timeline.
Mysterious thing, time. Powerful, and when meddled with, dangerous. You know the laws, Miss Granger. You must not be seen.
Our heroes suit up in the new invisibility suits and load their gear into Star-Lord's ship. Ant-Man shrinks the ship with the Avengers inside and places it in the capsule. Then they all make the jump to the Battle of New York. Amongst the chaos, they remain invisible, looking for the window to distract Thor long enough to sneak the ship into the wormhole without them being seen. Once the Tesseract is located and guarded by Captain Marvel, finds a safe place to stand by, awaiting further instructions. We will now see Iron Man's nuke hit the Chitauri ship and the wormhole close indefinitely, as Captain Marvel and current Nebula are now trapped on Earth, away from the fight, ready to take out the Tesseract with a word from someone else on the other side of the universe. Now it's anybody's guess what happens from there, but here's my predictions if you're interested. We have Iron Man's new nano suit, now built with vibranium, will also be completely invisible. Along with the Red Ether and Professor Hulk, this will be way too much for the Mad Titan. I think they will be on the brink of success, killing the Mad Titan when the timeline skewers and a current Infinity Stone wielding Thanos shows up to defend his past self. Now they take on two Thanoses, and only the Red Ether can save them. This is where Hawkeye's daughter will die, and the Ether will cause Hawkeye to lose his grip on reality and take out the Mad Titan in a fit of rage. The Ether, making him capable of yielding the stones, will then possess all the Infinity Stones, and the Red Ether completing his ultimate power. Hawkeye, in a fit of anguish and despair, begins to kill everyone and everything in sight, but not before Valkyrie gives the word to Captain Marvel and Nebula back on Earth, and they proceed to destroy the Space Stone. The stone is destroyed, and the snap never happened. The timeline is corrected, and the Avengers wake in a modern time when the snap never took place at all. Thor still floats with its remaining Asgardians in space with a very much alive Loki. without the Tesseract, of course. Rocket is on some mission with the very alive Guardians, including Gamora, when they change course and head for Earth. The entirety of the full Avengers, with all its might, then assembles one last time. Doctor Strange, with help from the Time Stone, helps Captain Marvel out of a time loop of gaining her power and losing it over and over again, and possibly gaining her power for the final fight. We don't know that yet. Thor bifrosts them all to a distant planet where they take on the Mad Titan one last time and are successful in destroying him once and for all. I believe the final blow in this reality will go to Nebula, as it has been her intentions to kill him for so long. In the heat of the battle, I predict that Thanos will, in fact, send Black Widow and Captain America back in time, where Steve Rogers retires with Peggy Carter in some unknown location, and they live out their days in love. The snap and everything else that happened afterwards will only be a reoccurring nightmare for the rest of the universe. But the surviving Avengers, those involved with the big plan, will remember absolutely everything. I believe that the post-credits scene will be of Black Widow arriving in the past to witness herself training and speaking with her old headmistress, lining us up for the Black Widow movie, which will most likely kickstart Phase 4, aside from Spider-Man. Now it's time to rub my own rhubarb here. Being a writer myself is how I was able to piece all this together. So if my theories are indeed correct, I guess we'll have to wait, like a 20-something days to be sure, I hope that you will all consider purchasing my book. If I can predict the greatest films of our time, imagine what I can do if I'm capable of creating my own universe, which is exactly what I have done here. You can find them for sale internationally, which I'll leave the link in the description for. So that's all I have to say for today. Let me know what you think in the comments section. On a final note, I'd like to thank my subscribers who have been very loyal and have stuck with me through this entire time, the demonetization and all the problems that came with the channel, and we're finally in the clear, so we're good to go. I really can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for sticking by me. That's the end of the video, and thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you at the movies.